Mr. Secretary, do you stand by that testimony
Without
that
objection.
you've never owned or
I personally,
your family? By your family.
personally, yes, my wife owned a plane and sold the
You
plane.
flew on
That's
that plane. This isn't some kind of partisan gotcha. When we are asking Americans to make serious sacrifices as we transition for the common good, and your family and or yourself are flying around on private jets, that smacks of hypocrisy. It actually hurts your cause.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering. America, welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of This Week in DUMBmocracy, a show that explores political buffoonery as it happens and sometimes as caught on tape. So today we're going to be talking about some of the worst type of political buffoonery that I identify in my book. I'm bringing it out early, guys. Schnooks, Crooks, Lies, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons, available now on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and other online bookstores. We're talking about hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is a term that is thrown around a lot in political circles. Everyone accuses everybody else of being a hypocrite at one point or another. It's sort of the standard insult in politics, but it's also the most insidious of all. I'm just going to read you a passage from the book really quickly here. It's a quote from a news article on the subject of hypocrisy. And I'm going to take off my glasses to do it because I'm blind as a bat, guys. So bear with me a second here. When ordinary political campaigns consist, as they recently have, of candidates calling one another liars, it is hard to make the case to the next generation that honesty is the prime virtue in public life, and that a few pitiful wretches are too weak to observe its strictures. It is much more likely for children to grow up believing that it is all a game and that the rules exist only for display and that anybody is free to break them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the challenge of our time, to talk about hypocrisy and to call it out whenever we see it. And that's what we're doing today with this clip from the House Foreign Services Committee, who were questioning John Kerry, the current climate envoy for Joe Biden. He's had a storied career, U.S. Senator, former Secretary of State, swift boat commander, some might even say, from back when he ran for president. But this is an exchange with John Kerry talking about his own personal hypocrisy when it comes to his trumpeting of climate change and whether or not he follows his own strictures that he's trying to apply to the rest of the country. This is an exchange involving Congressman Michael Waltz from Florida concerning about Secretary Kerry's own personal travels.
Mr. Secretary, in exchange with Mr. Mills, you just testified under oath that you never owned a private jet. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record article here from February 15th of 2023. The John Kerry family private jet was sold shortly after accusations of climate hypocrisy. Mr. Secretary, do you stand by that testimony
Without
that
objection.
you've never owned or your family? By your family?
Personally, yes, my wife owned a plane and sold the plane.
You flew on
That's
that plane?
Not in a number of years, but I have flown on it,
And
sure.
this article is not then inaccurate, that your family owned a plane, you flew on a plane.
My
Mr.
wife owned
here's
the plane.
here's the issue.
Yeah.
This isn't some kind of partisan gotcha. When we are asking Americans to make serious sacrifices as we transition for the common good, and your family and or yourself are flying around on private jets, that smacks of hypocrisy. It actually hurts your cause.
It's a great point by Waltz. It's the main point we're going to be discussing. Listen to John Kerry's responses here to show how he is trying to dodge Waltz's shots at him. It's very telling to me when listening to John Kerry. I didn't own a private jet. My wife owns it. Really? Does that make that much of a difference? Who owns it within your family, whether it's in your name or if it's in somebody else's name? If the car is in your wife's name, ladies and gentlemen, or if your car's in your husband's name, and you use it, does it really matter whose name it's in? It's still you who would assume that carbon footprint, right? Especially when we're talking about climate change. So what does it really matter if his wife owns it or not? But the fact that he's trying to dodge here shows you the type of hypocrite that he is. And by the way, folks, becoming a hypocrite doesn't happen overnight. This is years and years and decades of a political life being able to dodge these sorts of inquiries, to gain your own advantage, to keep your own point coming across. To say rules for thee and none for me is politics embodied right now in John Kerry.
Mr. Secretary, but I'll move on. I just want to know from a record standpoint.
Afford me the right, at least to set the record straight here. I do not fly on a private jet. I do not fly. I fly commercially.
Have you flown on a private jet since you've taken this position?
Just let me just finish. I have flown 5 times in the last 2.5 years on Mill-Air, which you also fly on.
Sure.
Or some of you who travel fly on.
By the way, Mill-Air, I believe, would be military-operated aircraft.
5 times. Otherwise, all of my trips are commercial
Have
airlines.
you flown on a private jet in a personal or official capacity since you've taken this position?
Possibly once. I just don't, I'm trying to think of the
I
date.
think you need to take the broader point of how this appears to the American people
no,
as we're
it
asking them
shouldn't
to
appear
take
that.
that.
Let me tell you why.
We're
not asking
these
Americans.
testimonies?
We're not asking Americans not to fly.
You know,
You're trying to create an unequal thing. We're
no,
not
we're
saying
asking
don't
you
fly.
to lead by example, Mr. Secretary. That's what we're at. You,
Which is why
your
I
family,
fly
and others to lead
commercially.
by example.
Which is why I fly.
In that
commercially.
vein, does your office or the State Department keep a record of your official travel and scheduled meetings?
Of course.
Does that include the individuals you're scheduled to meet with? Can you provide those records to Congress? Will you provide those records to Congress?
Of who I've met with?
Your official travel, taxpayer funded while in this position.
Sure, happy to do so.
Thank you. I appreciate that commitment. Switching.
Okay, so we're not going to go into the further testimony here, but we are going to explore John Kerry's history when it comes to flying privately, especially his recent history as he's been traveling on behalf of the Biden administration, and even before that, traveling in favor of discussing climate change and the associated reforms with it. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. So this is the article that Congressman Waltz was referencing at the beginning of his examination. This is from Fox News. John Kerry private jet sold shortly after accusations of climate hypocrisy. A spokesperson for Kerry confirms to Fox News Digital the jet was sold over the summer. So here we are. A special presidential envoy for climate, John Kerry's family, quietly sold their private jet to a New York-based hedge fund following intense criticism of the plane's carbon footprint in light of Kerry's work fighting global warming. The Kerry family's private jet, which was a Gulfstream GIVSP, it could be a G4SP, I don't know what that means. I don't fly a lot in private jets, folks. I don't know anything about them. Is no longer owned by this family's charter firm, Flying Squirrel LLC, according to the FAA. In financial filings submitted since joining the Biden administration, Kerry had reported that his wife, Teresa Heinz Kerry, yes, Heinz as in the family behind Heinz food products, owned a stake worth more than $1 million in the firm. Excuse me, SpongeBob. The plane's registered owner is now listed as another company. Documents filed with the Connecticut state government shows that that company is a subsidiary of a New York City hedge fund. So there you have it. He did have a private jet in his family, and he did apparently use it. Now let's see how often he used it. Apparently, it got quite a bit of use. This is an article from August of 2021 in the New York Post. John Kerry's gas-guzzling family jet has taken 16 trips this year alone. So according to this article, John Kerry's family had already taken 16 flights as of August of 2021. The trips were between Idaho and California. For those who don't know, John Kerry and his wife had vacationed in Idaho Sun Valley for decades. And earlier records have also shown multiple times trips between Massachusetts, including Martha's Vineyard and Boston. And as we continue on here, there's a good shot of John Kerry right there. Is the same plane linked to, again, Flying Squirrel LLC. Now, it also bears repeating that John Kerry's family, I think, tried to make money off this private jet as well, because according to Forbes, you could have, back in August 21, chartered John Kerry's private jet. According to the article, U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry was in the headlines over the weekend after it was reported he had flown 16 times, including to President Obama's 60th birthday party on Martha's Vineyard. The State Department denied the claim, saying Secretary Kerry lives on Martha's Vineyard. He did not travel there for a party. He took a ferry to Martha's Vineyard. He did not fly commercial or private. My God, the parsing of language here is Bill Clinton. That depends upon your definition of is. That's the level that we're dealing with here. Kerry's use of private aviation is a focus of conservative media. We've been talking about that already. And the former Secretary of State previously defended his private flying, saying, quote, "If you offset your carbon, it's the only choice for someone like me." We're going to get to that in a moment. Now, the interesting thing here is that, remember that FlightAware data that we talked about in the Post article? FlightAware shows that it was the private jet for the Kerry family was also being operated by Executive Jet Management, a division of NetJets, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway. It's incestuous, the relationships here. Berkshire Hathaway, of course, a very well-known New England financial institution. While NetJets sells shares, leases, and jet cards on a fleet of look-alike private jets, EJM, which is Executive Jet Management, as it's known in the industry, manages airplanes for wealthy individuals and companies that don't want to have their own flight department, so they lease out their jets. So John Kerry was making some money off of that. And remember that whole statement about carbon offsets and all that? Let's look at this clip of John Kerry from 2019 talking about his private jet use.
On that issue, pollution, I understand that you came here with a private jet. Is that an environmental way to travel?
If you offset your carbon, it's the only choice for somebody like me who is traveling the world to win this battle. I negotiated the Paris Accords for the United States. I've been involved in this fight for years. I negotiated with President Xi to bring President Xi to the table so we could get Paris. And I believe the time it takes me to get somewhere, I can't sail across the ocean. I have to fly to meet with people and get things done. But what I'm doing almost full time is working to win the battle of climate change. And in the end, if I offset and contribute my life to do this, I'm not going to be put on the defensive.
So there you have it, folks. This idea of climate offsets is John Kerry's justification. And this is the argument of the privileged, of the rich. They can buy their way out of the use of their private jets and the guilt that comes from it if they give money, basically, to different funds that are supposed to offset your carbon footprint of what you're doing. Now, that's got to be a lot of money with the amount of travel that John Kerry put in over the years with his private jet. But come on, guys. When it comes right down to it, this is, I don't need to tell you, this is clearly hypocrisy. This is such hypocrisy. John Kerry is out there telling you what you need to do to battle climate change. Getting rid of your gas stove, changing over to an electric vehicle, no matter what the cost of it may be to you. All these things that you're being asked to do. And meanwhile, what is he doing? He's flying around on his family's private jet and then hiding it later on and playing semantic games with the Congress. Are you kidding me? This is supposed to be a leader? This is not leading. This is playing the political game. This is hypocrisy of one of the highest magnitudes that you'll find. John Kerry here is one of the most insidious types of buffoons because he believes he's right, And he thinks that he has a right and he's entitled to do what he's doing. It's absolutely disgusting. Do you expect me to fly around commercial? Do you expect me to get on a boat? When you're someone like me, which is already separating himself from someone like you, by the way, guys, when you're someone like me, this is what you have to do. It's a necessity for him to fly in a private plane. And oh, by the way, he's only done it once in the past couple of years, so you should forgive him for that and forget about all that stuff and listen to him. Do as I say, not as I do is classic hypocrisy. So that's going to do it for this video, folks. Thanks again for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Keep joining the conversation. Let me know what you think about John Kerry's hypocrisy. Let me know what you think about hypocrisy in general. And we'll continue the conversation next time, where we'll be discussing even more buffoonery occurring this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.